Thanks for watching the third and final daily roundup interview from this year's Borlaug Dialogue. Joining us today to discuss takeaways from today's sessions and also highlights from the week, we have Barbara Stinson, President of the World Food Prize Foundation. Many thanks for joining us today, Barbara.
My pleasure, Hannah. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so let's start with today's sessions first of all. Can you please tell us what you thought of the various speeches and discussions that we've heard today?
Well, it was a wonderful wind-up to the entire week. It was so inspiring to start with King Abdullah II, who had a great charge for us, really call to action in food security from a country who struggles with so much. And they're advancing food security. They're prioritizing it. So we need champions in leadership in countries like that to really do the work that's needed to transform food systems. So it was a pleasure to have him, and I thought his remarks were inspirational.
Okay, and what were some of the highlights from today's roundtable on equity and access in food systems, in your opinion?
Well, that was our final roundtable. It was so exciting. It was a group of 12 really diverse individuals coming from all different backgrounds, and they highlighted what we've touched on throughout the week, which is the cracks in the food system disproportionately impact those that are most vulnerable. But they brought in these incredible examples and talked about how funds need to be reinvested at the international level in the CG system and also down at the local level, and how you can empower farmers in rural Zimbabwe by investing in livestock and investing in all of what's needed for smallholder farmers. So it was great to hear about the kinds of work that's needed at all levels. We had a gentleman from Hormel talking about racial equity issues here in the U.S. Just to enter and become part of the agriculture industrial platform, if you will, as an African-American man has been a challenge for him, and now he's taken up the mantle. So talking about equity issues from that standpoint. And understanding from a farmer in Iowa all the way to trying to develop the kinds of systems that are needed across, really all the developing world from some of our largest global partners. So it was, I found it a really inspiring discussion. And prior to that, on the Food Systems Summit, Agnes Kalabata convened a great group, partly individuals that are really knowledgeable about the development of the summit, and they're integrally involved, and then others coming from Tanager and other organizations that are less involved, not necessarily weighing in. And one of our youth representatives talking about how Food Systems Summit can and should be a remarkable buildup, but there is so much to be done between now and next year. David Nabarro laid out really the timeline of activities of dialogues that are going to go on in hundreds of countries, literally, and trying to hold 3 phases of them and build them up to conclusion by next June or July. I mean, that's amazing. And Louise Fresco there speaking about the science, the knowledge that we already have that needs to be incorporated, but don't lose track of the fact that we don't know everything yet. Well, what don't you know? What information do you need to collect? And then, the caution from Agnes Beck, we can't know everything. We have to move forward regardless of not having all the information. So it's going to be an amazing year in food systems development and transformation for the next year. And we're just so glad to have been able to be part of it, to support these forums that are going on all over the world.
You've kind of got ahead of me on my questions there. I was going to ask you if the sessions from today made you hopeful that the agricultural sector is up to the task of making food systems more equitable, more inclusive, more sustainable. Do you have any thoughts on that, on anything that we haven't already covered?
Well, I do, because, my sense from the entire week is that people are mobilized, and everybody is focused on this and understands that it's going to take doing things very differently than in the past. And they're ready to move in all of the areas in which they work. They're ready to move forward and make changes and invest differently and bring in new information and engage more stakeholders, those that are sometimes not consulted. And so you get that sense that everybody really is ready and completely up to the task. And if you sit back and think about, even in just the major topics that we tried to cover, there's so much to do that it's also completely daunting and overwhelming how much work there is, and how, in fact, you can move all of these work streams forward in a methodical way and then knit them together. So I know Agnes has assembled an incredible team. The architecture they've set up to do that gives me great hope. I have tremendous hope about being able to do it. And I don't think anybody can come away from this week without being at least a little bit, certainly challenged and overwhelmed to try to do it all. But I think we all agree we have to do it all. We have to. This has to be the moment that you look back and you say, in 2020, in the midst of a global pandemic, we all came together and converged on the fact that this has to be the pivotal moment towards change that we can look back on and recognize.
Definitely. And those challenges that you mentioned as well, that was a major theme that Sarah Eckhouse touched on in her closing remarks. Director of Food Shot Global, she kind of merged them together in talking about the food shots and talked about the challenges and opportunities. It's almost coming hand in hand. So just finally, if you could give us your reflections on what you made of her closing remarks.
Well, Sarah did such a beautiful job knitting together the whole week, the challenges and opportunities that we're all facing, touching on so many of those, and bringing in Dr. Borlaug's, not only his quotes and his philosophy, but some of the challenges that he gave us so many years ago that we know we're still addressing, that we still have to take on. So even just operating in a systems approach, recognizing that collaboration has to cross all the boundaries. We've made so much progress on collaboration. I've been working on collaborative problem solving for 30 years. We've made huge progress. We're going to have to do more better to do what we need to do in the next decade to 2030. So, the challenge he gave us to meet all the SDGs, yes, they all relate. You can see in a beautiful EPAD graphic that's posted on our website, agriculture and food systems in the center, and every SDG is highly impacted by food systems and impacts every element. So I also appreciated her call to, and we heard it reflected in others, to listen, to really listen and listen differently, and listen not for the messages you've heard before, but for what's new. And of course, Food Shot Global is doing a tremendous job focusing investments in new and innovative ways. And I bet we've heard, between everybody that was on stage in some way or posting resources on Whova during the week, we've heard of hundreds of innovative platforms for investment. That's really what it has. We have to move the capital, and we have to move it in different ways, and move it in a way that is equitable and increases that accessibility. So it's got to be new kinds of mechanisms invested in different ways. And I hope that all of these discussions contribute to really figuring out some of those tactics and strategies to be applied to really make a difference, down to those detailed plans that Agnes is going to be calling for from countries all over the world, and the U.S. among them. So
fantastic. And as you've mentioned, there is a jam-packed year ahead, lots of things to be done. Maybe if we're taking it a bit closer, looking week by week, can you tell us a little bit about what you've got coming up at the World Food Prize Foundation?
Well, we will take a giant deep breath and probably not do very much for a couple of days. And we're trying to make all the resources available on Whova, make them live, and streaming out lots of tidbits and comments and some of the most useful information. So everybody, just to keep the conversation alive beyond our dialogue. Then we're going to produce highlights and summary on some of the major areas and conclusions. Try to catalog some of the great ideas, and try to catalog all the great ideas if we can, to advance, put out there into the public domain for use and for continuing the discussions. And then we're planning a regional dialogue, first one ever for South Asia, Southeast Dialogue, and really looking forward to focusing on food systems in India and South Asia countries. But most immediately, next week is the Iowa Hunger Summit, which is always a wonderful feature of the Dialogue Week here. And we have a whole program of racial and equity panels and discussion elements coming forward, trying to support local hunger issues, understand the initiatives going on here, and advance those as well. So I think there's, 300 or 400 people coming in for 3 days of meetings, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week as well.
Great. That sounds like something to look forward to as well. So thanks very much for your time today, Barbara, and thank you for what's been a really insightful week.
Well, Hannah, thank you. I mean, Farming First has done a terrific job. Everybody loves the daily digest that comes out each day, and you're monitoring what's going on throughout the discussions. It contributes so much. We appreciate your posts and appreciate your support.